Hello, ma'am. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good. This is so amazing. It's my first time here, not in Kerala, not even in Thiruvananthapuram, but first time at Car Festival, and it's just stunning.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Right. So I'm going to jump straight to it. Yeah. Sometime in the summer of 1989, I fell in love with Bollywood. That's the introduction to your book, A Place in My Heart.
Yeah.
But you come from a family that has screenwriters, filmmakers, authors. What took you so long to fall in love?
It actually wasn't. So my mother was the what we call the Bollywood Kida, Kamna Chandra. She wrote Prem Rog for Raj Kapoor and she wrote Chandni for Yash Chopra.
Right.
But it was her, my brother and my sister. We were all very much sort of literature leaning students as we were growing up. It was not, my brother, we watched a lot of English films. At that time, Hindi cinema was sort of slightly, this is the 80s.
Right.
The films weren't frankly very good. And we sort of grew up watching mainstream Hollywood and reading literature. And so we were slightly snotty about like Hindi cinema.
Right.
So it took me a while to fall in love. And, the irony is that I've spent all of my adult life just talking about Hindi cinema.
Right. Was there one film that made you fall in love? Was there a meet cute moment where you watched a film and you're like, wow, Hindi cinema is...
Nahi. I actually fell in love with the Hindi film industry.
Right.
I started just as a lark. I went and started working with a magazine called Movie. After I graduated, I did my bachelor's, I got a BA, and I was like, what should I do? So there was a job open. And I didn't know anything about being a journalist or about how to look at cinema, but it was just so much fun.
Right.
To go from one, and I'm talking about another world now, guys. You could go from set to set, just talk to actors.
It was a lot more intimate back in the
It
day.
was a lot more intimate. There wasn't like 5 gatekeepers in between. It was just such a delightful, crazy world.
Right.
And I just fell in love. And then from there, sort of decided that I really want to be a film journalist. But I needed to educate myself in how to be a journalist. So I got a master's in journalism and then came back and started working. Came back meaning I went to Northwestern University to get a master's and then started working with India Today. And that sort of set off.
The rest is history. Yeah. But how have you seen the industry change, ma'am? Over so many years, you mentioned it was a very small, intimate place, back in the 80s, early 90s. Is it the studio system that has changed the landscape altogether, or is it something else?
No, it's too many things. I can't even explain to you. It's honestly, I don't think you can imagine now what it was like. Just the sort of slight chaos, slight circus, the scripts being written on set. I don't know if this is true, but the legendary story about the early 90s was that there was this one script writer writing 2 films, and he got the scenes to the wrong production, right? Because you're writing them, 2 days before, right? So one scene was sent here, one scene was sent there, and they shot those scenes before they realized it's not from our movie.
Wow.
I don't know if this is true, but that was the sort of craziness, and you can't even imagine any version of this happening today, or at least I hope not.
Right.
But it's a completely different world, and on a more serious note, it's far, far more organized. It's far more streamlined. It has much more women in the movies now, which is wonderful. So it's a completely, I used to call it, sort of BlackBerry and post-BlackBerry kind of thing.
Shift. Yeah. I think, it's a natural progression, because when you say, when you talk about writing scripts on the fly, that's something that still happens on sets, down south. Not every film, but, in some films in Malayalam it happens. And what you talked about, women representation. I think that corporate or that studio system coming into place might have played a part in that.
For me, it actually, I'm not sure that the studio system really helped in that, but it was just my first sort of memory of seeing female ADs was Mansoor Khan's Josh.
Right.
Right? I think it was like 98, 97, somewhere around there. And it's the first time I saw, because before that, I would be on a set, and literally I've been on the set of a film called Rajkumar, where I went to interview Madhuri Dixit for a cover story we did on her for India Today. And it was me, it was Madhuri's mom, who accompanied her everywhere, and MD. And there were 3 women, and of course the dancers, it was a song sequence, etc. But it was literally 5 women in a 200 unit, and none of us questioned it. None of us thought that
It was the norm.
it was the norm. So when you had women on set, I was like, wow, when did this happen? You
Right.
know? And I asked Mansoor, I'm like, my God, you have female ADs. And he said they're more efficient.
So it's a top-down thing then. I mean,
It is
starting from-
always a top-down
Right.
thing.
So you've been doing this for almost 3 decades now?
Yes, more than.
Wow. Okay. So I'm sure you have a lot of films that stick, very close to your heart. Now, was there any one such film that really opened the doors to Malayalam cinema for you?
Of course. Now they're going to groan because it's literally the same film for everybody who comes from the north, Kumbalangi Nights.
Right. So Kumbalangi Nights made you, take notice of Malayalam cinema, modern
Again,
Malayalam
fall in love.
fall in love with Malayalam.
Yeah, because truthfully, before that, of course, we saw Malayalam cinema at festivals.
Right.
So you saw Vanaprastham, and I saw Adur Sir's films, but it wasn't a sustained engagement. It was maybe once in 5 months, 6 months, and what happened with streaming is that combination of streaming arriving in India, and 3 years or 2 years later, a pandemic, it was like we all sat at home and discovered that, oh my God, the actual genius work is maybe not in Mumbai.
Right, but
I have to go back, guys. Just make sure I'm safe.
but sticking on topic, I mean, everyone's talking about Bollywood, going through this difficult phase now, but Malayalam cinema, for as amazing as it is today, we went through a bit of a rough patch as well. Early 2000s, late 90s wasn't the best time. Then it took films like Chapa Kurisha, Traffic, and path-breaking new generation cinema to kind of turn the tide. Is this really the first time this is happening in Bollywood, or is there like a cyclical quality to this trend?
No, it's always a cycle. These are always phases that come and go. I mean, look at the cinema in the 80s. And of course, we're generalizing because Mr. India was also 80s, Masoom was also 80s. But largely, what we remember of the 80s is the sort of crazy songs, outlandish, flamboyant song sequences, really not much of a story. So I think it's a phase. I'm always an optimist. So
Right.
I'm very hopeful that Hindi cinema, look at like Amar Singh Chamkila.
Yeah.
What a lovely film.
Lapata Ladies.
Lapata Ladies, so at this point we don't have enough of those. I think the emphasis has become too much on the 1,000 crores. That figure of 1,000 crores, and it's all thanks to Mr. Rajamouli and Bahubali too, but it's become such a albatross around everybody's neck because everybody has to hit, that's the benchmark now. And I think we'll find a way out. Better things will come, but at this point, it's not the best.
Right. Whenever I speak with filmmakers, especially directors in Hindi, they're in awe of the quality of writing that's there in South India, especially Malayalam.
Yeah.
What is missing in terms of representation of writers, or is it the remuneration, the comfort, the position they're given in the industry? Honestly, they're one of the most important cogs in the machine, but they're not given their due credit.
Absolutely. No, this is exactly the problem. That for too many years, Hindi cinema did not nurture their writers. And when eventually it comes to a head, you can't keep doing that. I mean, the last great star writers was Salim Javed,
Yeah.
which was the 70s and the 80s. So if you don't nurture the writers, if you don't make writing an aspirational profession, if it's so difficult to pay your bills, you're not going to get great stories.
Absolutely.
And they cannot be in that pecking order the last. That's the foundation of the building you're erecting. And if that is flawed, that's not going to be, no matter how much fancy
the decor is.
The decor, exactly. It doesn't work. I think that realization is slowly coming in, and streaming has really enabled that as well. Because streaming is all about writing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, also for new talent or talent that was lying untapped, for a long time, be it actors or filmmakers, how much do you think streaming has, had a part to play in a resurgence of careers of a lot of technicians and actors and
massive. I think especially those first few years when streaming was also taking risks of a massive proportion. Sure, Saif was in Sacred Games, but the truth is that Jaideep Ahlawat knocked it out of the park in Patal Lok, or Pratik Gandhi in Scam, and there were entire series being built around actors who we did not really know well. So it did that massively. It created its own sort of roster of stars, who did not have the burden of the box office. And what it did was give a whole new lease of life to female actors.
Right.
So if you look at women, like a Madhuri or a Kajol or a Ravina, all women with talent, but Hindi cinema doesn't know what to do with them. Because they're of a certain age, and it's like, oh my God, like, honestly, they're all looking so great that, you're like, abhi ye heroine hai ki heroine ki maa hai ki ye kya hai? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, Hindi cinema, in its brackets, did not know where they would fit. But streaming did not have that burden and found great roles for these amazing women. So in that sense, it's been fantastic.
But then, what is the role of a star if, not box office guarantee? The star system existed because there's a certain guarantee that there's a certain number of footfall that will happen, right? I mean, that's the basic, the foundation of this whole system. But like you so rightly said, there is a new crop of actors who are stars in their own right on OTT. So has that definition changed of what it means to be a star?
I think it has. I mean, look, the basic definition is still bums on seats.
Right.
Right? What can you open a film to? So Allu Arjun is a massive star because look at what Pushpa 2 opened at, right? It's that first day. After that first weekend, it's the story and the film, etc., etc. But that first day, they're coming, and there are now a few directors who people will come in for. When it says a Mani Ratnam film, you will see it, irrespective of who's in it, right? So Rajamouli film, you will see it. So I think there's a few directors who are also now those stars.
Star directors.
Yeah, absolutely, as there should be. But I think the definition of stardom has changed in a more fundamental way, in the sense that you build the longevity of, let's say, the Khans. When you have people come into theaters again and again and again for like 2 decades. I don't know who has that longevity right now.
Right.
Who is going to be able to do that over that amount of time? So, I'm sure you guys have all seen Pathaan, and, there's that scene right at the end where they're like, who's taking over from us? And they're like, nobody. So, I hope that's not true.
Absolutely. I mean, it shouldn't be the last era of the superstar, I mean, is what I think. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard of this gentleman. There's a person called Patrick H. Williams on YouTube. He's a film, critic, and he does a lot of videos. And there's a very interesting point that he mentioned in one of his videos that the reason Hollywood is going through a difficult patch right now is because the star system is pretty much non-existent. Other than a Tom Cruise, you don't find many stars. Iron Man is a star, but not Robert Downey Jr. so much so. So in India, especially in South India, where we have star worship that happens on a different level, do you really see that happening here? because I feel stars still have such a strong command on the social fabric.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I don't see us going down the Hollywood way in terms of stars not being as critical to our lives as they've always been. But there is a fraying. At least in Hindi cinema, I think there is a fraying. Not, of course, for the top 5, but it's not that same hold that truthfully, the question is, who's the next?
Yeah.
Is it Ranbir? Is it Ranveer? Is it Vicky? Who's going to make people come back and pay? And actually, Vicky Kaushal explained this in one of his interviews. He said, Amir said that to gauge stardom, you have to see the weakest film of a star and figure out what was the money that made, and that is your barometer of who's a star. But I think we need stars. I love stars, don't you guys? Yeah, they bring pleasure and happiness and joy into our lives,
Absolutely. Who's your favorite star, ma'am?
See, so as a film critic, I can never say this.
I'm asking because how do you enjoy films as an audience? Just as a fan
I do. And I was just saying this, that, people have this misconception that film critics are somehow very curdled and unhappy and just looking to find faults. And we're really not. We love the movies. That's why we do what we do. But I enjoy films. I love films. I was screaming as loudly and as anyone else in Pathan. When he says, Naam to suna hoga, we're like, yes!
That's what I came for.
Exactly.
But it's interesting though, because when I talk to my filmmaker friends, they can't watch a film without judging. Yeah, they could have done this better.
But it's the same. My husband, oh my God, it's impossible to see anything with him because it's exactly this. Whoa, look at that light, that shadow, that beard is artificial. I'm like, just go away. I'm having a good time. So I think it's directors. It's not critics.
It's not critics.
No.
That's not the problem. Well, but the thing is, today, everywhere you look, be it on Instagram or YouTube, you have reviewers, picking up their phone, and you have interval reports, you have FDFS reactions. It's a little too much, right? How has that affected professional critics such as yourself? I mean, how has that changed your approach to the craft?
It hasn't changed.
Okay.
What I do, I have to continue to do. Whether people watch me or don't watch me or read me or don't read me, I only have the one way of doing my work. I can only strive, I can only watch more, I can try and be a better film critic. I'm not a big fan of interval reviews, and I just don't think it's fair. I'm married to a filmmaker. I know firsthand how difficult it is to make a film. Even the worst film, nobody sets out to make a bad film. In their heads, they're all making Sholay, right?
It happens, exactly.
Yeah, and it should be, right? You're bringing in the passion, you're bringing in the work. I think when you critique, you have to come to it with love and respect. And when you say something about someone's film in the interval, that's disrespectful. You've not even seen the whole thing. You haven't even given. So I cannot ever, no matter how anguished I am by a film, leave. Because who knows, the last frame might be amazing. So for me, to say something about a film in the interval or to just give a knee-jerk response, I think is just not the right way to do it.
Do you think it's too extreme? Like nowadays, people either love or hate a film. Yeah. There's no appreciating the good for the good and the bad for the bad.
Yeah, I mean, but everything's extreme. I think it's because social media, and the more extreme you are, the more clicks you get, the more likes you get, the more people talk about what you've just said. And I think you're right. It's just, and the truth is, when it's a negative review, it travels more. This is the sad thing. When you're really, I try not to be mean, but there are times when I just lose it. And I am mean. And that inevitably gets more traction. But you can't play into that.
What's the meanest thing you've said, ma'am?
I can't. Don't make me repeat it.
No, but that gets you more views is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. And it shouldn't be. And so the danger of that is you should not say what you're saying because you think it'll get views.
Right.
You can't do that. That would just be dishonest to your profession and to the film and to everything else. You know, you have to say, I have to speak my truth. So if it's a film I did not enjoy, I must be able to say that respectfully and with affection. That's what I feel.
So do you think that's the main difference between like a professional critic and a reviewer? You know, this sensitivity that comes with reviewing or talking about a film.
Yeah, I think it should be there for everyone.
Right.
You know, you must say what you feel. Look, you've paid, right? You've bought your ticket, you've given 3 hours of your life. You are absolutely entitled to an opinion. But not in a way that's belittling. You know, not in a way that's insulting to the person who put in their life and their 2 years of their life or 3 to make a movie.
Right. I'm asking so much about this because in Kerala we've had a phenomenon.
I heard, sorry to interrupt, but I was told there was actually someone who went to court to say, don't allow
Your theater reaction reviews to go out. You know, you can watch the film and maybe put it out in the evening or maybe the next day, but when first day, first show, you have, you know, audience members there saying, it's, or, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down, it kind of really affects the film from there on.
I know. And that's a very difficult thing to stomach as a filmmaker. But the truth is, make better films.
I think that's the bottom line. What is pan-Indian to you, ma'am?
So again, when I started, there was already pan-Indian, right? We already watched Roja and Bombay. And I'm talking about the early 90s. So Mani sir was pan-Indian in the 90s. Shankar sir was pan-Indian in the 90s.
OG pan-Indian.
The OG pan-Indian. You know, we all saw all their movies. But I think what it means in today's world is the idea that we all go to theaters as a matter of course. So if Pushpa 2 releases, I'm not saying, oh my God, it's a Telugu movie. Nothing. It's a movie and I'm going. And that's a wonderful thing. You know, I last saw Dominic and the Ladies' Purse in a theater and it was just so much fun. And oh my God, how good is Mammootty sir? He's just brilliant, right? So, yeah, so that's pan-Indian, and that's the joy of pan-Indian, that these movies are now available to me with subtitles. I go to a theater, I watch it with other people. I think that is a Bahubali-led phenomenon, that for all of us, it becomes routine to go into theaters and watch films that are not in our first language.
Right. But I think, isn't there an element of honesty in those films? Like you mentioned Dominic, right? It's a story that has a universal theme in some ways, but it's a film that is very much a Malayali film, right? But there are directors and storytellers who are trying to engineer the perfect pan-Indian film.
You can't.
It's impossible, right?
You can't engineer anything.
You're saying that to an engineer, so that hurts. But
in the movies, my friend, you cannot engineer anything. And you know, there's a great scriptwriter, William Goldman, who wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He's an Oscar-winning writer whose most famous quote was, in the movie business, nobody knows anything.
And nothing could be truer, right?
Exactly. So you can't engineer anything. The beauty of a Bahubali or a Pushpa or anything that works is that it is rooted, it is authentic. And Avesham, you know, it works because it's so true to what its milieu is.
Yeah.
And that's why we all loved it and just couldn't get over Fahad Fasil.
Yeah. And like
right?
you said, it's a very good film.
It's a very good film, but you can't say, oh, I will take one actor from here, one actor from there, and I will make a pan-India film. That doesn't work.
That's not how it goes.
Yeah.
Ma'am, for the last couple of years, you've been working with Amazon with the Overmania report, right? What are your most shocking findings, or what are the findings that you want to share with the audience today? And I would love to know, you know, the trend that you see happening and where do you see the industry evolving into going forward?
You know, it's an amazing thing. So this is, guys, for those who don't know, it's a report on women in in entertainment, and it's basically hard data, because that's what we don't have. We all know that it's a very skewed gender equation, but when you actually have numbers which are done, the data is researched by Omax Media. The report is funded by Amazon Prime Video, and I'm so grateful to them for doing this just purely because it makes the world a better place. What the good news is that there is change, right? That there is fundamental change. No, don't clap yet. It's very slow. It's just,
Change is always good, man.
It's very good. It's very good. There's every year on year, I think we've done it now for I think this will be year 6 or year 5. You see that needle move a little bit, and they're looking at HODs in streaming, in theater, how many women are in positions of a certain level of power at streaming, so how many have corporate jobs, etc., etc. It's very slow. So you're looking at 2%, 3%, year on year, some categories not at all. There was one year when I think there were 3 movies shot by a woman in the top 100 grossing films in India. And there was all 3 were shot by the same woman.
Wow.
Keiko Nakahara had shot all 3. So it was one female DOP in that entire list. So it is slow, but it's there. And that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think this with data comes accountability.
Yes.
With data comes a means to measure progress.
Yeah.
Is this, for example, in Kerala, we have, a FEFCA, we have organizations, trade unions that, work towards making sure we have the WCC, we have forums where, women can bring up their issues as well. But do you think it's a deep-rooted systemic problem, or is it a cultural thing, or is it a mixture of the two?
It's a mixture of the two. It's a very, very deep-rooted. Like I said, when I started, there were hardly any women, and we didn't even think there was anything wrong with that. And we're educated middle-class women who were all in the workforce, but none of us thought to ask, why aren't there more women here? So it's also such conditioning, right? You just grow up in a certain way, you don't see women around you, and you just think that's the way the world is.
Right.
But I think in the last 7 or 8 years, we've seen more and more women, especially in positions of power. I mean, the first actor I had a conversation about pay parity with was Anushka Sharma, about 7, 8 years ago. And she was very blunt and very forthright in saying that when they go to an outdoor location, the hero and the heroine don't even get the same level suites. The best suite in the hotel will always be for the hero, right? And she was the first woman who articulated that to me. And it made so much noise at that time that every time she told me she went for a location after that, they were like, ma'am, sweet, theek hai? It's okay na? So people are vocalizing this. Women in positions of power are vocalizing this. It's a constant conversation. The WCC has done incredible work. I mean, hats off to those women, honestly. Really, really. I mean, what it takes, I can't even imagine, to just stay there and keep going and face the hell that they've had to face. So it's moving. It's taking forever to move. It's taking too much. I think it's asking a lot out of women on the front lines, but it is moving.
That's always a good thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
Touch wood. Ma'am, in Malayalam, even though, or any South Indian film industry for that matter, recently we've been getting a lot of visibility, but there are films that we consider classics, from the 80s or from the 90s, films that talked about the everyday man and his issues, and also topics that were taboo or very far out of left field for the time. But these films are still very important to the collective consciousness of the community here. How do we make sure that these films find a new audience and stay preserved for generations to come?
It's a tough one, honestly, because I'll tell you, I remember, so we have a lot of young interns that when I was still running Film Companion, and I asked one of them, I'm like, so where does your movie watching begin? And they were like, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum. So I'm like, what? it's true for every language that there is a general sort of, it's just they're not interested in going back. Right now, they look back on the 90s as some sort of great nostalgia, but nobody's watching, not enough people are watching Guru Dutt or Bimal Roy or K. Asif, or, so it's true of every industry that there are classics. But I'll tell you, I was told that this week or in the next week, Satyajit Ray's Nayak is re-releasing on the big screen. I think that might be re-releases. Right. So you introduce, because on streaming, I'm not sure how many people, when they sit down on a Friday night, are going to say, okay, let me watch this classic from, I tell my kids who are both 20-something, and they're like, what? Like 90s, that's ancient history. I was like, that's not true at all. And black and white, to matlab, forget it. It's not happening at all. So I think maybe re-releases, maybe conversations, some way to prop up. And there's Shivendra Dungarpur at the Film Heritage Foundation. They're doing very, very good work with re-releases. Right. So they re-released a whole bunch of Salim Saab and Javed Saab's films. I saw Sholay again last year, like a 70 print at Regal Cinema, 1,000-seat theater. I cannot even tell you, just the experience and that high. So maybe that's the way to do it.
Hopefully, because I think OTT, there is a shelf life to a film on OTT, right?
Yeah,
and it'll be very sad to look back and say, I can't watch this film anymore because it's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
There is this question I'm sure everyone's everyone's waiting to know. So I'm just going to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, okay? What happened to Film Companion?
So I'll tell you what happened. I realized that, first of all, it was 10 years, right? Which is a really lovely, solid run. We had a great team. But I realized that as it existed, I would not be able to reinvent it and make it do too many other things, right? So I felt like we hit the peak of what we were doing. And if we were to continue, we would continue doing great work, hopefully, but more of the same. Which for me, I felt like I don't want to be on a treadmill. I've changed, like I started out as a print journalist with India Today. For 12 years I worked there as a hardcore print journalist, then went to television with NDTV, Star World, then went to digital with Film Companion. So I feel it's very important to reinvent, to stay in love. And you have to stay in love.
Like any healthy marriage, right?
Exactly. And the truth is, I was a terrible entrepreneur. A film critic turned entrepreneur is just a very bad idea. It should not. And I could never find the partner who would run a business. Right. And I had zero interest in running a business. I just want to watch movies and talk about it. That's all I want to do.
Fantastic, ma'am. But I hope, I wish you all the very best with your new outing.
The Hollywood Reporter India. See, so that, again, you haven't even asked, but I'm explaining. For me, the Hollywood Reporter India is the next step. You take our stories, our artists, our journalism global.
Right.
And we're going to be, we have a magazine coming out in a couple of weeks. So to actually have a print magazine, to have a film magazine is so exciting. So it's those opportunities that were very exciting to me.
How does the rest of the world see Indian cinema now? I mean, you travel all over the world, you visit, festivals all over the world. Do they still look at us as song and dance and glitz and glam?
No, and thank God. But there was a long time, especially in spaces like, let's say, the Cannes Film Festival, where it was seen as very beautiful, very glamorous, but melodrama, high emotion. And those are things I honestly love. I don't see any downside of melodrama and high emotion. But for the West, it was slightly kitschy, slightly like, I don't know what the exact word is, but it wasn't their palette.
Right.
But I think in the last 15 years, there's been so much of Indian films traveling to not South Asian audiences, right? So, of course, the melodrama, I mean, you had to see Shah Rukh in Berlin. There were white women lined up at like, in that freezing cold, screaming for him. So, there's, mainstream has traveled. But I think Payal Kapadia, All We Imagine Is Light, again, so much about Malayalam cinema, so much Malayali artists. My God, how good are Divya Prabha and Kani Kusruti and Harud. That has changed so much. The fact that an Indian film got selected in competition at Cannes after 30 years, okay, and then won the second prize at that festival. I think there's been a complete shift.
So the newfound sense of respect, would you say?
Absolutely, and curiosity, because truthfully, they thought for the longest time that Indian cinema and Bollywood is the same thing. And I spent years explaining to journalists in the West that it's not. That we have many, many other cinemas. Rajamouli, RRR, Natu Natu, all of those things have chipped away at what their idea of Indian cinema is.
Right. But as a whole, when you look at cinema all over the world, right, we're going through a bit of an inflection point. It's in a state of flux where look at AI, look at the democratization of filmmaking, where anyone with a phone can go out there and make a film, right? How do you see this art form? Primarily, I would let's talk of the art side of it first. How do you see that evolving? I'm sure the industry will evolve faster than the art form.
Yeah.
But what's the future of cinema, according to you?
It's great.
That's good to hear.
No, truthfully, I don't think any of us will ever tire of listening to great stories. And for those of us who come from a place of privilege, especially in that pandemic when most people in the world had to deal with very, very real problems of food and housing and shelter and medical care, for those of us who were in a place of privilege and could be in our homes safe and watching, the stories sustained us.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, it was because we didn't go out of our homes for months and months, but because I could watch a Kumbalangi Nights, it gave me joy, it gave me hope.
It kept us sane.
It kept me sane, exactly. So I don't think there's a world in which we say that, cinema doesn't matter, or cinema is irrelevant. In fact, this big executive in LA, a Hollywood executive, told me that if the pandemic couldn't kill theatrical business, nothing will. Right? And it's true. We may be sure, maybe for some of us, that habit of every Friday is still to come back, but I don't think there's anything in the world that replaces the theatrical experience. So I am very hopeful that we will continue to always love the movies in the theaters.
Fantastic, man. But there's one thing that I'm very scared of, to be very honest with you, being an actor.
Yeah.
With AI coming to the forefront, will I have a job? Given 2 years into the future, given 5 years into the future, it's something that not just actors but even filmmakers are contending with. Because of course you can still have long form storytelling and cinema, but in a completely different way, right? So do you see that becoming a sort of parallel industry, or do you see that being like a new form of cinema altogether?
I don't think this is happening in the next 3 years, that suddenly filmmakers will decide they don't hire you, they just make some version of you on AI.
Awesome.
I think if it develops out enough, it would be like a parallel thing. I'm hoping, at least, truthfully, I don't know enough about AI and what, I know what the threats are, but I don't know how it will evolve out. I don't think there's a place in which an AI can write Avesham.
Ma'am, there shouldn't be.
No, there can't be. Who would think of that damn song sequence when Fahad comes out in that towel? Who can think of that?
Right, that's true, ma'am. But at the same time, looking at the glass half empty, the SAG-AFTRA strikes that happened. One of the main things they fought for was to make sure that the studios don't overly rely on AI.
Yeah.
Do you see something like that happening in India?
There should be. I feel artists and writers must come together and put rules in place, put legislation in place, put policies in place of what this new tech can be used for. Because you'll have to protect yourself. And we don't know. We don't know what the future is going to be. None of us imagined in COVID. None of us imagined. But I'm saying I was, when phones first came out in the late 90s, none of us imagined in 20 years we'd be all glued to our screens, and we are.
Right.
That's all. Our whole life is now that damn phone, right? So we have no clue where this is going to go. So I think there must be legislation and policies in place. If not legislation, at least film industry policies that regulate what AI can be used for and what it can't be used for.
Fantastic, ma'am. I hope so too. Seriously. Should we open up questions to the audience?
Nowadays, Bollywood industry dominated discussions on Indian cinema. Other industry overshadowing about Bollywood compared to Bollywood industries such as Tamil industry, Malayalam industry, etc. Nowadays, other industries create effective storytelling and other social reality concepts, etc. So this kind of change involves what shift indicate the audience increases beyond the Bollywood industry. What shift indicate the evolving Indian cinema identity?
Sorry, what shift?
Indicate the evolving Indian cinema identity.
So are you asking
That means
what will happen?
Nowadays, earlier days, Bollywood industry dominated all other industries, such as Tamil cinema, Telugu cinema, etc. So nowadays, other industries focus on more creative and more similar to Bollywood industry, song creation and effective storytelling kind of things. So this kind of shift indicate what is the uniformity of Indian cinema. Is this good or bad?
No, I don't think there's uniformity in Indian cinema. And that's the beauty of Indian cinema, is that it's so diverse. The fact that at one point in December, you had All We Imagine Is Light running in theaters, but you also had Pushpa 2 in theaters. I think that's the magic, that we don't have to watch one type of film anymore. And I feel that this pan-India phenomenon is brilliant, because we are now playing against the best. So you're not just playing in your backyard where I'm the best director in Hindi cinema. No, but are you better than X director in Telugu cinema? Are you better than Mani sir in Tamil cinema? So when you are pitted against the best across the country, the finest talent will naturally come to the top. So I don't think it's uniform, and I think this idea of all cinemas coming together is just going to yield better things, greater movies. At least that's the hope.
Hi ma'am, my name is Arjun. First I would like to thank you because I'm an aspiring filmmaker from Kerala, and I've learned a lot about movie making. I'm a self-taught, self-learning filmmaker.
Thank
I've
you.
learned a lot from Film Companion interviews, master classes. So I wish that you continue doing that at some platform where we can listen to interviews of directors and scriptwriters. Two questions I have. You have been watching movies for a very long time. Have it ever occurred to you that you have to write a script? And I know there is already a master at home who makes beautiful movies. Have it ever occurred to you that you want to write a script and direct? Second question, as a film critic, what would be your advice to a new filmmaker? Like one advice if you can give to a new filmmaker, what it would be? Thank you.
So I think, well, listen, you can watch all our stuff on the Hollywood Reporter India YouTube channel. So we have interviews, masterclasses, etc. Would I ever want to write a script or direct? No. I don't have the talent at all. I don't have the courage either. I think it takes a very specific courage to be an artist, and you would agree with me.
Yes.
Hannah? Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does, guys. I feel like I have so much respect for artists because, you spend your time, years and years and years of your time creating something which in one morning
Is judged.
and can be judged harshly, your failure is public, and then you have to get up and do it all over again, and you do. So I don't have the spine or the courage to actually do that. So no, I don't wish to do that. What advice? I would just say, tell a story that you are just crazy to tell. I think what we talked about, can you engineer a pan-India film? Can you engineer success? No, you can't. So this is what I've seen in my home. I don't know. When Vinod was making 12th Fail, people were just like, but who's going to watch this, right? And they did watch it. So I think just tell a story that possesses you in the deepest way possible and tell it to the best of your abilities. And so Vinod always says that I have to love my film. I don't care about everybody else while I'm making it. I can't think that this scene will so-and-so like it, will so-and-so like it. That way, even if nobody likes it when it's released, at least I've loved it. You have to operate from that, is my advice. But I've never made a film, so, ask him. He's the artist.
Hi ma'am, so I wanted to ask you about the exposure of Indian cinema and international platforms like Cannes and Oscars. While Hindi film has had their exposure, I don't think there's not much exposure. I've not seen much exposure for Malayalam films and South Indian films. So my question for you is that, is it problematic to have European organizations like Cannes to be a benchmark for recognizing films all over the world?
So, the truth is, look, they've created one of the finest film festivals in the world. It is their curation, it is their sensibility. Now, as filmmakers, as artists, we can say we don't care. There's enough artists who say, but why are we so stressed about the Oscars? What does it matter? And sure, that's a point of view. I don't subscribe to it. I think it's very important to have our films from Kerala, from South, playing at these global platforms, and not just Cannes, but maybe the Toronto Film Festival. Vetrimaran's film Bad Girl just won the NetPack Award at the Rotterdam Film Festival, which is wonderful. So I think that we'd never have to change the way we tell stories to suit a Western palate. I don't think that's what I'm advocating at all. But if you get those platforms, it gives you an audience you did not have before. How far Payal's film has traveled from being at Cannes, the advantage that film got, and it's a lovely, lovely film. So I think they are not the, what do you call it? Look, cinema is all subjective anyway, right? So it's not key if Cannes rejects your film, it's rubbish. That's not true. But if you get a place in Cannes, can it open 50 doors? That is true. So I think there's no downside to being in Cannes. But do we have to retrofit our art to be there? I don't think so.
Hi ma'am. So my question is, Indian cinema is often seen as mass entertainment or serious act, while industries like South Korea in films like Parasite manage to blend both. Is Indian cinema unable to do this because it sticks to the formulas, or have audiences been conditioned to separate these films?
No, honestly, I don't think that Indian cinema is only entertainment and doesn't have depth, or not at all. I mean, you look at a film like Ullaraka, which I've just learned to say. Did I say it correctly?
Can you say it again, ma'am?
Undercurrents. I must have said it
Ullaraka.
completely. Ullaraka? Ullaraka?
Almost there.
Oh, shit. I tried. Give me marks. I'm saying a film like that, right? I couldn't stop watching. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie about things that are so, I was so surprising in where it went to and how it finally ended up. And both Parvati and Urvashi ma'am are just stunning. I think this is a stereotype about Indian cinema, And also because our format is song and dance. That's how we love to hear stories and tell stories. People tend to think, oh, but it's just entertainment. Song and dance is stunning. Song and dance is great art. You can't dismiss song and dance. And there is a great value to being entertaining. You know, it's not because you're entertaining, there's something wrong with it. It's not. We need pleasure, we need joy. It's the first time we go to the cinema as children, we're going for that. No one's going to become a better person. You know? So I think the best movies combine that. You don't go in ever to say, like, now I really want a moral science lesson. But any film that can change something in you while also entertaining you is the best there is. And I think there's plenty of those in Indian cinema.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm here.
Sorry, where am I looking?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So there is clear signs that there is interest in Malayalam cinema. It is very clear to all of us. But apart from Payal Kapadia, and we do see a lot of Hindi filmmakers or maybe Tamil filmmakers, Telugu filmmakers adding a Malayalam song and then calling it pan-Indian, you know. But apart from that, though there is a change, I just wanted to understand from you, is the change big enough and strong enough for big networks and corporates to sort of look at vernacular languages, to bring their business here, to invest money in vernacular languages?
So I'll tell you, the business is, it's a hit and a miss. And right now, at least in Mumbai, the business is going through a bit of a change also because there's massive mergers in streaming. Apparently, I'm not the best person to talk about business, but apparently there's less money in the market. So given those circumstances, I don't know how much people are willing to experiment or try and develop new markets. But is there respect? Is there an understanding that the best stories are coming out of here? Absolutely. I don't know anyone who is not looking to Malayalam cinema. I mean, Anurag Kashyap just said on the Hollywood Reporter that I'm moving to Kochi. So, you guys are going to have Anurag Kashyap here soon. We lost him, truthfully, I can't answer the question about will there be business, but I think even that will come. You know, when they see the numbers, I mean, from what I'm being told, Marco did massive business also in Hindi, theaters. Finally, the box office will move the needle. When you have a few more of those that, people come in and don't care that it's a Malayalam film, but watch it anyway, which is what happened with Pushpa, which is apparently the biggest Hindi film of all time in India, but he's not even speaking in Hindi.
Wow.
Yeah. Dangal is still ahead, but Dangal made 1,200 crores in China. But in India, Pushpa 2 is the biggest Hindi film, and it's a dubbed film. So anything is possible. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening so patiently.